The Richard Lewis Esports Podcast. Taking you behind the scenes of the esports industry.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Richard Lewis Esports Podcast. I know we've been on hiatus lately. That's mainly because I've been kind of out of my home studio stroke dungeon, doing the rounds, hosting events, snapping necks and cashing checks and all of that good stuff. So we're back. It's going to be more regular now that I've got the time to focus on it. And with that in mind, I've brought in somebody that I know is a great go-to guest for fun and frolics. And of course, it panders to the only esports community that likes me at all, StarCraft 2. It is I consider him the god tier caster. I love him to bits. It is Nathan Fabrikant, perhaps best known to you all as Nathanias. So how are you doing, Nathanias? You all right, brother?
Yeah, doing pretty well. It's been a good day.
Okay, well, let's start with the first thing. You know what's coming. I always struggle with the name Fabrikant. I don't know where it comes from. It's a surname I've never encountered before in my life. It sounds like South African or something. Like, where the fuck do you come from?
Well, it's weird because I've never met anyone. I've only ever heard the name like outside of my family once before, and I think I Googled it. There's like a Wikipedia on some guy that I guess killed a bunch of people, which isn't really the greatest thing. But my father it comes from my father's side of the family. I guess obviously, right? He's from Odessa. He came with my grandfather from the Soviet Union, and according to them, from what I've been told, is like they're pretty much full-blooded Russian. But it's of all the Europeans I've spoken to, most of them love to point out to me that it translates to industrial worker, like factory owner or something, in every European language except Russian. So I mean, it beats me.
Well, that's crazy. I mean, just the idea of Russians going over to America as well at that time, like, there's got to be a story there, dude. Like, well, maybe you were spies or something.
No. They were like, I think they basically caught some sort of boat out across the sea because, there's like the whole Iron Curtain thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It was really, maybe steel. Someone will correct me on that, I'm sure. But basically, there are tough relations between them. That's actually my grandmother went to Australia, so my whole family got like broken apart. It was really sick. But they went to New York, and that's also where the only other reference to Fabrikant. There's a place, I think it's called Andrew Fabrikant Jewelry, like in Manhattan. That's it. So you're not gonna hear Fabrikant anywhere else.
No, it's like I say, I've been working with people for a long time. You're the first Fabrikant I've ever had a conversation with, and the best, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah. So look, let's talk about StarCraft for just a moment. We can come back to the Iron Curtain and Rocky IV or whatever much later. But I remember when you first came on the scene. So I want to kind of do a little bit of a rewind. And you were the community guy, and everybody was kind of like, oh my god, this guy's like so amazing. He's a great caster. He deserves mad props. He puts the work in and stuff like that. So I want you to think back to that time, and I know it probably does seem like another lifetime, but you're putting in all this work. You're the community guy. Everybody loves you. Why are you focusing on? I mean, StarCraft, by the time you came on the scene, it kind of already felt like it was wrapped up. We already had our like talent, our go-to casters, the people that we really like. Why did you strive so hard to get involved in it?
Yeah, so for me, StarCraft was like, I just been playing it for a really long time, but for most other people in the scene, like especially the other commentators, they've all been around or at least have participated for a long time. Maybe Apollo came in a little bit late, but for the most part, StarCraft was still kind of a fresh experience to me. Even though I'd been playing it for a while, I didn't know there was a pro scene until maybe like 2 years before I started. I didn't watch the early seasons of GSL, all that cheesy goodness. So I got in late enough that everything seemed pretty new to me. And as far as the trying to make it in the game, I hadn't really originally intended to like make it in StarCraft. I just streamed the game a lot. My friends basically all told me that they were better than me at StarCraft, and for some reason, this was like the one thing where I was just like, fuck it, I'm not going to be worse than all my friends at this game. So then it slowly just built into, like, I got Diamond League, like, well, maybe I can stream now. And then it kind of just, it just kind of went from there, I guess. This story is not too much of a secret. I got a couple people that helped me out with my stream to go to events. But I guess the specific reason for StarCraft is just I was just into it for such a long time. And, yeah, I don't know. I guess I was just hooked. I was hooked before anything else could have caught my attention.
Now, this is a question that, I mean, it probably is a little bit early to start offending the guest, so I apologize if it comes across like that. But would you argue? I mean, and I've seen some people say this about you, and I think personally that it's harsh. But obviously, some people have pointed to some of that help that you had in the early days, and some of the relationships that you had at that time. Do you think, had you not had support from some of the established figures in the scene, do you think you would have still succeeded all the same?
It's really weird because when people talk about me getting support from people, quote unquote support, the very first time that I had an interaction with somebody that was anywhere at all involved in the StarCraft scene was very, very early on, almost actually exactly a year before the whole Pro League thing happened. So I was just streaming. I was like going into Christmas break, and it was like 3 a.m. I just wasn't having a good day. I was just like streaming. I didn't know anybody. I had like 20 viewers. That was it. And then I was just doing my thing, because streaming for me was a way to get outside whatever, if I was having a bad day, or if I just didn't feel like doing anything, because I was still in college at the time. And a bunch of people showed up in my chat and started spamming Baus. Yeah. And I had seen like When Cheese Fills before, but then like Maximus Black, like someone who to me was like an esports celebrity person, because it's like, oh, they've got a shit ton of YouTube subscribers, their videos are hilarious, and like that relationship was purely built off of him, and in the words that he told me, he was just looking for a stream that had very low viewership to like spam and have a little bit of fun with. But the reason why he actually like talked to me and like wanted to play, we ended up playing some games, and he's the guy that got me in touch with a couple of, I guess it's a very generous stream viewers who invested in my stream and allowed me to get to those events. So he said that the reason why he did it is just because I seemed very passionate about what I was doing, despite not having any viewers really, doing the same type of commentary that you would find on like a couple thousand viewers stream for any game was pretty much what I was doing for 20 or so viewers. For me, it was like, okay, I'm just talking about the game as I play it to distract myself. But I guess the effort just kind of showed. So I never look at it like I was handed anything, because I feel in pretty much every instance I had to work for it. By the time that I was casting, I'd been playing for so long that most of the people who helped me or gave me hookups, as it were people that I had already spoken to about pro gaming. Like most team managers I've messaged at some point, been like, it's really funny. Like if you look at, I think I have them available on like my YouTube, really old Complexity Academy tryout videos where I'm like, I like make these. I have like my headband, and I'm like, man, I don't have any results, but I promise I'm gonna keep working and I'm gonna get there. So that's why you guys should help coach me, because I've never had a good practice, never a real practice environment. And that's the kind of stuff that most people don't know about, because that was way before I did anything. But when I got the first team that I ever worked with, Quanic. When they were coming back up their second time, they gave me a nice little boost in promotion and got me in contact with a lot of good Korean players. And the only reason why was at that point I was starting to get a little bit of traction from my commentary, but I hadn't been hired for any events. But the important thing was the manager of the team was the manager of Czech 6, who was somebody that I heard harassed quite a bit about, hey, can I try out for your team? Like a year back. And the guy obviously realized that I was quite persistent to still be there after pretty much being like that nobody guy that you're like, why is he always following us around at tournaments and stuff? So I like to think that every hand that I've been given is because I don't know, established some sort of rapport with them earlier on when I wasn't anybody.
Yeah. Was all that hustle? I mean, so when you're doing all that stuff, was it conscious, like in the back of your mind, like were you thinking, God, this is fucking demeaning? You know, like, oh, were you thinking this is just how it is, or like what's the mindset when you're doing stuff like that? Because I know I had a very brief period when I first got into esports when I had to try and hustle to get some money, and I hated it. I felt like I was dancing for fucking pennies. It was awful.
It was crazy. For me, I never felt like I was doing anything demeaning or whatever, because at that point in time, before pretty much up until the point that I started commentating and making a little bit of money doing events, I streamed full time. So I didn't have like a crazy amount of subscribers, crazy amount of viewers, but I had a dedicated base that like donated. I guess it felt weird, but I was still in school before I really dove into the whole casting thing. So to me, the potential of becoming a pro gamer was more of like a, you know, this is a fun side goal, but I really liked being in StarCraft. I met a lot of really cool people. I really liked talking to the people that I met through my stream, and I really liked going to the events because every time I would go there, I would just get this. I don't like this rush of passion, I guess. You know, you get it's any player I'm sure can relate. You go to an event and you get that post event. Fuck yeah, I want to practice. You know, as soon as the event's over, the first thing you want to do is be back home. It's like, yeah, you know, there's fun to be had, but you immediately want to be back home practicing because you just get that amped up about it. So for me, it was all about this goal that I had set to become a better player because I was pretty crappy at StarCraft 1, like I said, and my friends were all better than me. And then I went from being Gold League in StarCraft 2 in April 2011 to being Masters by October. And that was the point where I was like, you know, I've improved fast enough that I think I think I could be good enough to be Grandmaster or Pro Gamer within the next year or so. And, you know, I guess you aim really high, you hit a little bit, don't hit quite where you want to be, you can still be a caster, right?
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because the question that I was going to ask you next was, there's this perception, I think, in the industry, which is if you do anything in esports, I mean, not so much now, but I mean, this definitely was a thing. So when I first became a journalist that focused on esports, even though I'd been a journalist outside of esports, everybody said, it's because you failed as a player. You failed as a player. You never did anything as a player. You were too old. So this is why you're doing this. And I heard it a bunch of times. Oh, he just wants to be a manager because he can't be a player anymore. Or, oh, he's shit as a player, so now he's a shoutcaster. So how much about moving into casting was because, like, you were super, super passionate about casting, like that was always the end goal? And how much was, actually, this playing thing is fucking hard, and, you know, this is a great plan B?
You know, it was really, for me, it was about having an avenue to keep playing. At the time, so, like, the way I got into casting, right, like, I had done for my stream sponsor, I'd done a couple of, like, weekend one-off tournaments that maybe peaked at 1,000 viewers or so, and it wasn't anything special, but when the IPL casting competition came around, I just figured, I was like, well, maybe I could do it. Some people said that they kind of liked my commentary that I did in those small tournaments. I don't even know if the VODs for those exist, but those are like, I'm sure somewhere there's some hint of my very first commentating games. But basically, I had always seen wrestling that was like kind of a side thing. And it wasn't until I made top 4 at IPL until I got told, it's like, no, you can't. It's like, you're not, you know, we're not going to give you a job or whatever, that I realized, like, well, you know, it was at that time that I also I had to leave school, basically, because it became an issue of money for me. I had been, like, I paid my rent and whatnot off of my stream money, but on top of that, like, I didn't really eat a lot. I was a pretty skinny dude. If you ever see any pictures of IPL 5, I used to be really, really slim. And for me, I was like, well, I guess if I can try casting, if I can try this a little bit more, after IPL 5, like maybe I can make this work, and then I can continue to play and become a pro gamer afterwards. So the perception of like the whole, okay, couldn't be a pro, became a caster, still kind of holds true, because I guess if I was a good enough pro, then I would have been able to survive off of winnings or whatever. But going from someone who doesn't play any games in a dedicated way to being a pro gamer in a year is, it's asking a lot. Most people, especially the foreigners in today's community, have all been playing RTSs competitively for closer to almost 10 years. Like they've all been in it since the start, right? Either through Warcraft 3 or Brood War. So competing with those guys wasn't an option. And the commentary was, for the most part, at the beginning, I didn't really care too much for it, right? Because it was like, okay, talk about the game, but if I can get a paycheck out of this, that's really the end goal, because I just want to be able to play more without, because I knew if I had to go home and get a regular shitty job that I wouldn't have time, because I'd have to just work all the time and save my money to go back to school. So it was a bit of a YOLO move on my part. But the goal was, and still kind of is, to eventually be good enough to be a player. But now I've obviously recognized where my strengths lie.
So, you're still a good player though, right? I've heard you say this when we've been out having beers at events. Don't you consider yourself to be the best player out of all of the casters in the world? True.
Sick leading question. But
no, but what I mean is, like, apart from the dudes who are actual, real competitive players. I mean, like, just the casters. Like, you're a better player than Apollo, right?
He's pretty good, but I would say that of all the commentators, I'm pretty sure I'm the highest ranked.
Yes.
It's difficult though to gauge things like that, because Rotterdam, he hasn't been able to play as much lately, but he may have been at a higher rank. Like maybe I could beat him now, but if you told either of those guys to play long enough in preparation for like a show match or something, I don't think I would beat them. I don't think I would. I wouldn't call out a 4-0 against Artosis either, who it's hard to compare skill, because we were both Master League in Korea, but obviously if he doesn't play on NA, where it's much easier to get like Grandmaster, then how can I really compare my skill? But at the moment, that's always been my focus as a commentator, because I understand people's opinions, and one of the reasons why the word caster sometimes gets under my skin is most people associate a caster with someone that's not necessarily very good at a game but still makes a living off of it. And my goal is always to be regardless of whatever any other commentator's goals are, right? Like Dan's got a family, for Christ's sake. Like the last thing he's worried about is being better than me at StarCraft. For me, the goal has always been to be the best playing caster and to not have to say it myself, right?
Yeah.
Because if I have to be the one that's like, guys, I'm ranked higher than everyone else, then that doesn't really say anything. But if people recognize that through my work or through watching my stream or through listening to my commentary, then if people can watch me cast and say, this guy sounds like he's pretty fucking smart and plays a lot of StarCraft, that's the end goal, because
I was just asking that question to throw you under the bus, really.
I figured.
Yeah, I'm an asshole like that, but
it's okay.
But I figure we've got a good enough relationship that if I bring your career down in flames by asking such horrible questions and isolate you from the rest of the StarCraft community as a result, we'll still be cool. I think.
Yeah. I've done enough legal work to filibuster my way out of this stuff, so I'm not too worried.
So, look, let's get back to the DreamHack gig, the sort of turning point, I think it's fair to say, in your career. When you, got to go and do this DreamHack, as a community caster, everyone was, like, really psyched for you. Could you kind of believe that had happened? I mean, were you expecting to have that opportunity?
It was really sick, the way that it all happened, because I had a very different expectation in my mind of how things were going to play out. When I finished at IPL 5, one of the other things that kept me motivated, and I guess this is the part where you insta-sigh when you hear me say this, I had basically been promised a gig at IPL 6. Of course, as we all know, IPL 6 never happened. So yeah. I had a nice I'm sure they would have given me the work because we were already talking about flight plans and whatnot when it got canceled. So I know that they would have hired me if the event happened. That it was like that carrot, being dangled in front of me. That's like, if you keep working, you can have this. So it was a motivating factor, but when I found out, of course, like everyone else, it's like IPL goes under. This is before I heard about the DreamHack thing, so I'd been going really fucking hard to become a better commentator. And at that point, I was doing all the online leagues. I was doing the Acer Team Story Cup. I was doing the Russian Star League, and it's a lot of small stuff. And to me, it was like, okay, this is building up, and then I get my chance to do it on a main stage, and then I'm good. And then that happened, and I felt really demotivated. I had a work opportunity that I discussed with MLG that didn't pan out, and that was, I wasn't feeling very confident. I wasn't sure.
Why didn't that MLG gig pan out?
I guess it was just something. It probably ended up being related to them not doing WCS Season 2 that year, because of the way that. They didn't do the tournament for Season 2. So I was talking to them maybe around like March or February-ish, and it was like, well, you could maybe come try to like observe or something. And I was like, well, it didn't, this wasn't really exactly what I was looking to do.
No, it isn't.
It's like not quite what I'm interested in, because, I
rather than be in front of the camera, I get to be the camera. It's a bit of a come down.
Well, I mean, I never looked at it like that, but it just wasn't what I was practicing or preparing to do. It wasn't what I was doing, right? I'm not an observer, simple as that. Anyone that's had the displeasure of watching me cast a tournament on my stream knows that. But then it all really came down to, after all the time that I'd spent pretty much ruining, I didn't have a regular sleep schedule building up to IPL 6. I definitely didn't have a healthy eating schedule. That's where I put all this weight that I'm currently working to get rid of, the debt that I had for staying up all night eating shit food. But I was pretty hopeless. IPL 6 had been canceled. I was like, well, this was really my only opportunity, because I don't know anybody. I don't have an in. You know what I mean? Like, I knew some players, I knew some team managers, but I didn't know any tournament organizers. And like I said, MLG wasn't in the cards. I certainly didn't know anybody at DreamHack. Hellspawn was the person that had contacted me about the job, and it was very surreal for me because I was under a lot of pressure from my family. My brother in school was basically he's like, hey, you got to get a job, stop being a bum, and just, talking about, just basically staying up all night and watching Korean StarCraft, which, was like I did with the Pro League thing. Yeah. And my dad was like, look, you need to start thinking about getting a job, trying to save up money to pay off your loans so you can go back to school. And it was a very stressful time. And then it just happened. I woke up. I was supposed to commentate an Acer Team Story Cup match at something like 6 a.m. because that was my schedule for waking up. Yeah. But obviously, as a good time for Europeans, I had a message waiting for me on my computer when I got up, and I was still really tired. I wasn't really sure if I was awake when I saw it, because I recognized the name. It's like, oh, Hellspawn, this guy's on the good show. I was like, okay, it's a show I was the only reason why I would have recognized it. And then he just asked me. I was like, hey, he's like, you here? I'm like, yeah. He's like, we'd like to know if you want to come cast DreamHack Summer. It's like, we'll pay your flight and X amount of dollars, and you can come hang out. And it fucking blew my mind. It was a really crazy thing, because it happened pretty much at the perfect time to save me from problems that I'd been having in real life, with basically just figuring out what the fuck I was going to do with myself. So it was insane. Like the way that the few weeks leading up to the message had been, all of it together is what made it such a crazy thing, because I kind of had expectations that I would be able to get some work, but when they got shut down like that, and I thought I was fucked. That's what made actually being reached out to so much more have so much more weight to me.
Well, just before we move on to sort of the next chapter, I got to ask, because I've been there. I mean, fuck, I've been there recently. end of last year, even when you're just staring into that abyss and you think, what the fuck am I doing? Or there's two questions, I think. It's what the fuck am I doing with my life, and what the fuck am I gonna do? If I want to keep esports relevant, if I want to keep working in this industry. And I think everyone at some point asks either of those questions, if not both. So in the build up to DreamHack, I mean, were you really thinking like this could be it? I might have to give up on this and focus on other shit?
Yeah, I mean, I'd already been talking to, like, I was gonna end up working cleaning up garbage at like a landfill close by and just working a shit job for a really long time until we weren't like great off. So like when I talk about having to pay off my college loans as an American, it's normally a scary thing. But for me, I couldn't afford to pay like $2,000 a semester. Like that was a breaking point that because things just weren't easy. So it would have taken me maybe 2 or 3 years, and that kind of would have been it. I would have tried to stream every now and again, but I'd pretty much just sleep when I wasn't working. So yeah, I don't know, because I didn't know anybody. All I had was my stream, which to me, I guess nowadays I kind of know it's like, yeah, if you do the Twitch thing right, it's very doable. But at the time, I didn't think just being a full-time streamer was going to be a viable living option, especially since at that time, at least, there were so many more streamers, and getting viewers for me was pretty much impossible.
Yeah. So how do you think the whole DreamHack thing went? And in fact, actually, a better place to start is what happens when you get there? Because I know, obviously, you knew some of the dudes, but this is like, I imagine it's like being, a college player, and now you're in the NFL. This is it. You're surrounded by all the big names, and they're going to shake your hand and talk to you, and you've got to work with them, and they're going to tell you how they want to do things, and there's an expectation on you to perform to the same standard that they did. So what was it like, I mean, when you got into that environment?
I approached it the same way, like any other tournament, when I met players and stuff, at least as far as like trying to be professional, because my dad worked in photography for a really long time. Kind of goes with the whole not having a lot of money thing, right?
Yeah.
So he, whenever I asked him about meeting like people that were famous or whatever, he always be like, well, those people get bothered a lot, and you want to be professional, right? It's all about being professional, not showing. Obviously, that I'm like obviously I would go to the event, I'm a huge fucking fanboy of every single person that I'm going to meet, but actually showing up there, everybody's a lot more human, I guess, is generally what most people say. Like, you go to an event, you're like, oh, I want to meet this person. It turns out they're just a totally normal dude that's really cool to talk to. Meeting everybody at DreamHack, like I had flown before. I'd never been to Europe when I went to this event, so there were a lot of things on my mind, because we just like, I get off at the airport, and there's like a Swedish dude, and there's Adabisi, right, who I had seen at a previous event offline. And the first, I mean, for me, it was like the whole overall experience, because I get in the car, and we're like, okay, we're gonna drive to Jönköping now. I was like, okay, so it's a bit of a drive then. And I'm like, first thing I asked, so why are we driving on this side of the road, right? I'm like 19 years old. I've never actually read shit outside of like my history class about Europe. I thought everybody in Europe drove on the other side of the road, right? So the first thing that I did when I came there is just asking all these questions, because I figured, I don't know, I should just try to use the opportunity. But everything else is pretty normal. Everybody was really cool. Yeah.
Was there anyone, I mean, I guess this kind of ties into a, later question, but like, was there anyone who didn't sort of treat you like, you belonged there? I mean, you don't need to name names or anything, but was anyone like standoffish, or like, who the fuck's this dude?
No, I think I'm actually friends with probably more people that work with DreamHack than most of the other companies. Like all those guys, like, because I guess they've all talked about it before on like shows and whatnot, but it pretty much came down to, it was like, okay, we can't. It's like Artosis or whatever, for some reason, couldn't go to the event. So like they just, to them it was like taking a big risk, and they knew that I was going to be really passionate about it. So they kind of, I guess they pretty much everybody there had like the kid gloves on, right? Because you don't want to discourage me, because obviously I was the most nervous person ever. I was super panicky, and anyone who watched DreamHack Summer 2013, the first day, the first day was pretty terrible. I was sitting there with like a higher heart rate than when I work out. Just like, man, oh goodness, there's so many people.
Were you really had that level of nerves?
Yeah, man. I've always had I've actually, even still to this day, I have like anxiety, like just a general anxiety. Like my hands sweat a lot. I'm sure you've met me before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm always like in the back of my mind worry about like fucking up and whatnots. But on a scale this large, like the first time that I was talking at a live event, and I think the grand finals for that tournament broke I actually think it was like one of the highest viewed tournaments that year. It was like over 110, I think, pretty sure 110,000 viewers. Like I really had to not fuck up in front of a lot of people, because I knew I think it's fair to say, if I completely botched, like if I had just been terrible or super awful or not exciting at all, or just gave really bad analysis the whole fucking tournament, I probably would have never been hired again. That would have been it, right? That would have been like, okay, he came, it's like we gave him a chance, obviously it wasn't really that good, and that was it. So I was aware of this going into it, right? Like people don't just give you opportunities like this. So yeah, I was very, very nervous the whole entire time, until the adrenaline took over, I guess, for like the semifinals and finals, which is probably where the best commentary I did all weekend was.
So, I mean, how did you feel afterwards? Like, you go there, you do a job. I think everybody was giving you, the usual shout-outs and stuff on Reddit. Certainly everyone in the industry at the time that I remember seemed to think you'd done a great job. I mean, you made a real big impression on Apollo, no doubt about that. So everybody was like, yeah, this dude's the real deal. Like, how did you feel after the event? How did you assess your own performance?
I mean, I guess I just felt really good. To be honest, like, sometimes I go to a tournament and people at the end will be like, "Hey, Nate, you did a great job." I guess my reference for this would be the tournament I did last weekend, like DreamHack Stockholm. I didn't really hear complaints from people, but for me, we kind of talked about it on stream. Anyone, no one will argue that the games were mostly one-sided, at least the ones we did on stream, the ones I did. So I don't look at that as something where I don't think of that as a tournament where I did a great job. Maybe the panel part was like funny, and hopefully that made up for some of the one-sided series that we had. But I don't think of it as like a great casting. But people will tell me like, "Oh, good job at DreamHack," but in my mind, I'm always going to be criticizing myself. Summer, I felt like I just got really lucky with the games, to be honest. Like, it was so good. I couldn't think of too many criticisms, aside from obviously like basically screaming my lungs out. But the games were actually that good. Like, it warranted it when there was the 10 probes killing an extractor to win the game for Stardust. Like, it was one of the most epic, series that I'd ever seen. I think to this date is probably still one of the most. That show life series and Jaedong Stardust are two of the most epic series I've ever seen in StarCraft. So I knew matching it would be difficult, but I felt really good about the tournament because I kind of figured with the performance like that, I should be able to get picked up for something else, and at the very least, it got me more online work. Right, like I got promoted to like #1 priority for Acer Team Story Cup Season 2. And even then, like, that was when I started to get all the other stuff. So I was able to do the B streams for the Intel Extreme Masters tournaments, which was really nice because I still streamed a lot. So and that was also that was before Twitch money went completely to shit. So it was like, okay, it's a nice little bit here and there. I did all the DreamHack B streams for like Valencia, and they told me that they wanted me for winter. So I had like this, once again, I guess, this cushion where I was like, okay, as long as I keep doing what I'm doing and don't fuck up, I'll get this. That was around the same time after the event where I got hit up by ESL, and they were like asking me about that's when I got offered like IM New York.
Yeah,
at Comic-Con. But it was an interesting time. Like it was before. I think it was right around the time that they had announced Apollo. It was actually, it was leaked at that summer event that like Apollo is going to work with ESL. I had been talking with ESL for a very long time.
Well, I think Apollo leaked it himself, didn't he?
Yeah, well,
that was when he did the mic up thing. He was still mic'd up, and he said, "Yeah."
It was silly. We were like talking about random shit and drinking coffee before day one, and then all of a sudden, like Sean's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be doing. They're going to announce it like in a week. I'm going to be doing WCS Europe for ESL, like hired full time." And then someone's like, "The mics were live," and everyone's just like, "Oh shit!" But yeah, it was around that time. I think the biggest thing was, I had figured my performance would be enough to get me where I wanted to be, which at that time was with ESL, because I had been speaking to them maybe longer than any other company about work. Just nothing ever panned out for me to get a job there.
So let's fast forward a little bit. You are now an established caster. You've been getting gigs. You're part of the DreamHack family. So you've become an established industry person at this point. My question to you is, as somebody who was on the outside desperately sort of wanting to get in, then you get in, was the reality about how the esports industry was and how the people were and what the work was like, how much did it differ from how you thought it was going to be?
I guess I expected the scene to be more professional than it is. It's weird to describe it, right? If when someone talks about working for an event, when I think about work, I think, okay, I show up, there's a slot that I step in and fill, and that's it. And then the machine just goes, right? The cogs start to roll. And to me, that's what work is.
Yeah.
But esports is very different. And I'm sure you know, because every time there's an event, most viewers will see like, oh, this event did something good, this event did something bad. But, on the whole, they were all okay. But like now, as being on the inside, the biggest difference is not even just from the commentator's perspective, but in esports, everybody tries really hard to get all the pieces. Like instead of fitting in the last Lego, you're basically hoping everyone shows up with the piece they were supposed to bring, and then you all just freestyle it, because in esports, people who are bad at their jobs, you don't have jobs very long. So like a lot of things it's just people working together through a lot of crazy situations, and I'm sure anybody that's watched a tournament has seen a moment where it's like, hey, it's sound guy Kappa or something like that. Yeah. But in reality, it's some guy who maybe didn't realize that there was there was a switch that he hadn't thought to move, or there was something that unanticipated happened in the program that was out of his hands, and all of a sudden it's like, well, Jesus, the guy's microphone's up to twice the volume that it should be, But it's stuff like that you don't prepare for as much. I just figured everything would flow really smoothly once I got into it, which didn't turn out to be the case for, well, most of it. But it's things are generally straightforward enough. It's just you have to be ready to freestyle a lot.
Were there any personalities that you'd kind of come across online, and you were like, okay, like I understand this guy, and then when you got to an event, they were completely different, like when you saw the reality. So was there anyone whose personas online were so, disparate from the reality when you finally got to meet them? And that can be a good or a bad thing, actually.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question to answer, because at least people in esports, like the people that I work with, I found pretty much everybody to be relatively close to the expectations I had of them online. Like, it's funny because like the people, the go-to, right, and people are like, oh, there's no way this guy is the same way in person as he is online. It's like someone like Day9, right? A lot of people would say it's like, well, he's always like that in front of camera, but nobody actually knows. He could be a huge douchebag. The times that I've met the guy, like completely, we're just like, we show up at Red Bull office to like rehearse our work, and he's showing up to drop something off before like his after-hour gaming league thing, and I'm like, oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. Go to shake the guy's hand, and it's just like, no, it's like we do hugs around here, right? Like that's not what you would expect like a regular person you meet in real life. But if you know someone like that's persona online, that wouldn't be surprising to you.
How did it feel to be in the warm embrace of day 9? Was it good?
It was good. It was good. That guy is he's actually fucking hilarious. But I guess my point is I haven't run into anyone that it's been like, oh, I'm really looking forward to meeting this guy, and then it turns out, he's a huge prick, or I don't want to meet this guy, and it turns out to be all right. Like everybody, I don't know.
I get that all the time. I think everyone thinks I'm going to be a huge prick, and actually probably.
Oh yeah. I guess you, right? I thought you were a prick first.
Did you?
I think you BM'd me.
No,
like, after the whole
ego
root thing.
It was the ego thing. That was what I did. Do you not remember the ego thing?
Yeah, but I think I BM'd you in a Twitch chat once after your Broken Promises article about the root. It was about the root. It was about the root thing.
Right now. Fuck. Well, this is a nice little tangent. So, I like that. No, seriously. Let's talk about the ego thing first, because that was like totally a joke, and I think people thought I was being serious. Because I actually started after the DreamHack. I can't remember what it was. I think it was like at an event. I like tried to say hello. And you were like just super busy or whatever.
Oh yeah, no. At DreamHack Summer, you messaged me about like an interview or something, and I was like, sure. And that was before I realized that when you're commentating an esports event,
there's no time.
You actually don't have any time at all. And if there's one thing that I guess you've somewhat been led on to, and that many other people will say, is that if I'm in a somewhat uncomfortable or anxiety-inducing situation. I could be very, very slow to respond because I'm not sure if I'm gonna offend or get wrecked or some horrible scolding, because I am still a very young man who doesn't like being told what I've done wrong, I guess.
So I was like, literally, it was just a joke. I think I dropped it on that week's Unfiltered.
Yeah.
And it's just literally like, oh, Nathanias is getting an ego now because, that was it. We didn't get a chance to meet. And it was actually just a fucking joke. And then, this has happened to me a bunch of times. Like, so I make a joke on Unfiltered and it's clearly a joke. Winter, for example, like, I don't think the dude view bots, right? But, like, I know that that's kind of a thing on Reddit. So I just made a joke about it. And now everyone thinks I started the fucking rumors. And, like, I don't give a fuck. Like, whatever, dude. But B, like, I don't even believe that. And it was the same with the ego thing. And then it was like every week, it was just like, I can make this a recurring joke. But then I realized the sort of influence that you can have.
People on the internet take these things very
I know,
seriously.
dude. And then when I saw people repeating it, but meaning it, like, outside of the Unfiltered context, like, oh, Nathanias, I was like, what the fuck's happened here? Like, this is like the most down-to-earth motherfucker you'll ever meet. I couldn't.
It's a good point. It's one of the things that's kept me, like, I used to joke. I guess, like, on my stream, sometimes, like, I'll be a little bit crass or forward, but I used to joke a lot, or at least say a lot. It's like, oh, like, Protoss is OP and shit. And then it's like, in the context of my stream, it would be me losing a game very closely or something, and then being like, obviously, like, I should have built an armory or something silly like that, but I'll be like, oh man, if Protoss wasn't so ridiculously overpowered, and then people in my stream are like, oh yeah, lols, like, obviously I screwed up. But then you get, I've actually had people be like, Nathan, why don't you, like, when you're casting a live tournament in front of like 50,000 people, talk about how Protoss is an OP bullshit race and how David Kim should nerf them. And I'm like, do you really think that? Like, I think the game's completely broken. Like, obviously, I'm like, it's not, nothing is ever as good or bad as it seems. Like, I just thought it was being funny, right? Because there's,
Well, I actually did do that at Moscow. Like,
yeah. Well, for you, at least, most people should know that you don't know shit about the game.
Yeah, I fucking literally don't at all. Although, like I say, I played through the campaign before.
But there's someone out there now that's a fan of you because you made a joke about, like, Protoss being OP. There's some guy out there that was, like, drunkenly like, yeah, fuck Protoss, and now he's your biggest
probably
fan.
A Villo.
Yeah.
Like, he's probably my one fan. That's why I had to buy him that microphone. Just to keep them on side. But no, so you're right, though. Like, do you know one of the things that I really like about you as well is, like, I don't know if it links to this, but it's the way that almost as if it's some defense mechanism. Like, when you've had a few drinks and you say something that you don't want to be taken seriously, at the end, you drunkenly go, Kappa, like that at the end of a sentence. And it's
Well,
it's like my favorite thing about you. I think like drunk Nathanias saying Kappa at the end of a troll sentence. Like I think that's the best thing. But like, is that because, you know, you almost feel you need to qualify? Please don't take anything I'm saying seriously because it happens all the time.
you know, Kappa is it's something that obviously anyone who watches my stream or even talking to me in person sometimes, like it's something it's something that I kind of like as my own. It's you know, I don't consider it to be my thing, but I enjoy the disconnect, right? Like there's this big disconnect on the internet when you're talking to somebody and they say something that's like trolly or sarcastic. But yeah, you know, there are always people there that will completely miss the context of any statement. They'll be, you know, they'll take things literally when it shouldn't be. But I like Kappa because it's like your reminder that not everything has to be really serious, because there's never a time where it's used in a serious context, right? It's like, if this is being used, obviously this isn't intended to be some sort of, right? It's like, I hate your guts. You throw it out there. I mean, you don't need to overdo it, but that's why I like Kappa. Like, it's good to throw in there, especially when I'm drunk, to make sure, as you said, that I qualify everything as totally not intended to be taken 100% seriously.
I get it all the time anyway, because I'm a journalist. Like, everyone starts sentences with like, "You cannot repeat this," or "This is off the record." And it's like, motherfucker, I'm trying to have a drink. Like, I'm not on the clock right now. Like, this is the real Richard, you know. I get it all the time. But Kappa works just as well, I'm pretty sure, from a legal standpoint as well. Like, if you said something and then said Kappa at the end.
You know, Your Honor, I said Kappa at the end of my sentence. Clearly, the client should not have taken my statement that Protoss is OP. You should jump off a cliff, literally, right? You know?
But, so, here's something else I want to bring up just while we're on this sort of jovial conversation. So I bunked recently with Todd, our French friend, and he said that one of the most difficult people he's ever had to share a room with was yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Not because, like, you know, you were messy or anything, but he pointed to two particular instances, and I will do the first story, and that was when you had to wake up early, and he hadn't had a great night's sleep, and your alarm was going off, and you picked up your phone, and you were just staring at the phone. Like,
I don't even remember that
with the alarm going off, and you just kept looking at it, and he's in bed, and he's rolling around, going like, what the fuck is this guy doing? What's he doing? And in the end, he apparently got your phone.
Yeah.
And he just threw it and went, "That's how you turn it off," and went back to sleep. And you were like kind of saying, "Look, dude, I was like half asleep. I didn't know how to operate the phone." Is that legit? Like, were you that?
Yeah. Well, these things happen, right? Like, I think there was one time where Todd and I, like, I woke up at a normal time, and then like Todd gets up a little bit after me. He's like, "Man," he's like, "you was snoring all night." He's like, "It drove me crazy." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, Todd. Like, I never realized I was that bad of a snorer." But I mean, a gentle breeze will wake up Todd, as a point of reference for anyone. I'm not like I'm not a tugboat, you know, snorer. But
he actually said, like, so that was the second thing I was going to bring up, right? So when I bunked with him, like, I mean, I don't want to maybe say that we were drinking while we were working incredibly hard for DreamHack, because as everyone knows, I'm a model professional. But there was maybe a night or two where we did have drinks, and I'm an older guy, I'm a heavy guy, I'm overweight. I tend to snore when I'm drunk. Not so much when I'm not, but when I've had a drink, you know, the parts of my face or whatever just relax, and I just inhale them, and it makes this horrible burbling noise, like Zoidberg out of Futurama or something. And Todd, you know, found that out the hard way by sharing a room with me.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, you were fucking bad, but you weren't as bad as Nathanias.
Yeah, I don't know, man. He told me, he's like, "Yeah, I just started yelling at you, hoping you'd wake up." And I'm like, "How does that solve the problem? That just means we're both awake." But
I love him so much, man. Like, honestly, actually, one of the coolest guys I've ever bunked with. What was the reverse of that relationship like? Obviously, he had a terrible time because of your, you know, unreasonable snoring. What was it like for you bunking with him?
Oh, I mean, it wasn't wasn't anything crazy. Like the only thing that Todd does that sometimes, like if I get on Todd's nerves, the only thing he's ever done that's gotten on my nerves is when we're after a long day, he'll like he doesn't use headphones or earbuds when he listens to music. So I'll be like lying down and getting ready to sleep, and he'll be laddering because he's a dedicated guy. Yeah. But he'll have like some EDM music on pretty loud in the hotel room, and I'll just be like, well, I guess I gotta wait until he's done before I go to sleep. Because I guess I'm not quite as forward as him to be like turn that shit off. But then it's all right.
I find it interesting because like people don't realize this, like in the business, okay? Like it's actually, often you will find yourself sharing rooms, because of the immense costs involved in getting a casting team of talent together. Once you pay for the flights, especially if you're coming over from America, once you pay for, the fucking fee for them to actually do the work, having people share a hotel room cuts the costs in half. Hotels ain't cheap, especially in places like Sweden. So, we do and New York, all around in America, so actually we do share a lot of rooms. Like people who work in the business, you bunk with people, and it happens all the time. And casting and even playing, but I would argue more so casting, like when you need to be quick-witted and, off the cuff, you've got to be able to really assimilate information. Like a good night's sleep is so fucking important. And sometimes when you're bunking, if you bunk with someone that doesn't facilitate that, it's like, oh my fucking God, like it can be a thing. Like I'm not saying it's a thing, Todd, but it can be. So I wanted to ask you, like, who's been the best person to bunk with and who's been the worst person?
I don't think I have like a best or worst. It's just generally I just don't like being roomed with Todd, right? Like, the funny story, right? So the ESL guys hit me up a couple months ago. They're like, hey, we're doing IEM in Toronto. It's like, do you want to come? I'm like, of course I want to be there. And I was like, okay. So we talked about, like the fee, the travel, airports, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, can I make a request? And he's like, what is it? I'm like, can you please, no matter what you do, for the love of Christ, do not book me in a room with Todd. And it's like, all right, I'll forward it to our guy. And then like, a couple weeks go by. It's like, okay. It's like, I get an email. It's like, so this is your flight? I'm like, hey, do you happen to know who I'm being roomed with? He's like, you're being roomed with Johan Merlo. I'm like, God damn it, right? Like, and Todd felt the same way. We just, he's great to work with. Uh-huh. He's helped me out a bit in my career. Yeah. But the two of us just were not meant to share a room together.
Maybe we could make a sitcom out of it, like a reboot of The Odd Couple, like, and it's just you and Todd in an apartment.
Oh God!
Cameras everywhere, and eventually, slowly but surely, the producers like kind of just fuck with you a little bit. Like we hide some of Todd's food, and we.
Maybe you have to do it more Paranormal Activity style, right? It's like oh, we're both pretty chill during the day, and then it's like nighttime comes, and you just hear like it turns out that like I don't really snort, it's like a very light one, and then Todd just like you like see with the night vision, his eyes snap open. It's like what the fuck?
We could even call it the Todd couple. That'd work, actually. I mean, obviously it fucks you over for any sort of brand recognition, but I'm sure Todd would be happy with that. So
I'm not sure I'd be concerned with the royalties from that type of show.
You could maybe get a sponsorship deal for those anti-snoring strips as well.
Yeah, exactly. Be like, hey, Todd, if only you were wearing your insert brand name here earbuds that would have blocked the outside sound, you would have been able to sleep peacefully.
I'm just saying, people think I'm crazy a lot of the time, but that's like, it was like when I said about, QXC should get a fucking deal endorsing keyboards. And he should seriously, he should find a keyboard that it's so fucking durable. When I raged on ladder and tried to smash it to pieces, it still works. That's money he's leaving on the table, if you ask me. So it could be you.
It could be an awesome commercial, but
so moving back on to more serious stuff. And this kind of is serious. How are you finding overall the kind of work that you've got to put in? I mean, like you say, you're a young guy. You've got lots of strings to your bow, lots of things that you want to focus on in life. I'm pretty sure esports isn't necessarily the be all and end all. Like, I don't think, when you're 50, you're going to be commentating on StarCraft 4 or whatever, or maybe you will, who knows. But I think you want to focus on some other stuff. So how are you finding the immense work that you've got to put on to be a top-tier StarCraft caster, which I think exceeds perhaps any other game out there in esports, and maintaining a healthy life balance? How's it working?
It's very interesting. It's tricky, right? Like I guess we talked about this before we recorded this, right? Like, I've been staying up all day because I finally, after working weekend after weekend, I have a solid week or two to prepare for WCS America. And naturally, as not just a StarCraft commentator, as an addict, like, I want to watch every game possible. So my sleep schedule is a little messed up, but I get to watch lots of games. I get to play a lot. And those are like the two things that help me, because then when I go in, obviously it's very easy for me to banter or kill time with Roddy, because I can just talk about like a weird game I had on ladder, right? Or I can be like, this reminds me of this game that I saw in this European tournament that most, for WCS America, the American audience wouldn't just naturally be aware of things like that. So it is very difficult. The more, it feels weird to say, right? Because it's like, the more work I have, obviously the better off I am, but it does make preparing for an event very difficult. Like in WCS America, for example, I guess I'm just going to keep going back to this. It's on like October 11th. It's on October 12th and 13th, I think. And it is current, like today's October 2nd. So I've got 10 days. I've been watching some of the players' games. We have a top 8. I already know the matchups. It's very easy for me to just take an hour or so and like, okay, have these two actually played before. Preparation is easy. But you compare that to going from like Battlegrounds DC, right? We had WCS America round of 16, 2 days. Then I had 1 day where I wasn't doing anything, and then we flew the day after we finished round of 16. So I go from preparing and studying the round of 16 games to having a single day where I'm traveling to get to DC. I don't have as much time as I'd like. Luckily for me, I commentated every Battlegrounds event this year, so it was easy for me to already know all the player histories. But then I get home, I have 1 day to basically get all my clothes dry cleaned, right? And, take care of regular human shit. And then I had to fly out to Sweden the next day. So preparing for an event like Stockholm is very difficult for me, because European players it's hard for me to watch their games because, I have to wake up at 5 a.m. U.S. time to go do WCS America or study American games. So I'm generally not watching games of any European players, or, to a lesser extent, the Korean players. So it's challenging in a weird way. And I guess this kind of goes back to what I said earlier, and and even this, this little chat we're having, where I don't think it was my greatest commentary ever, because I couldn't really bring anything to the table aside from my, quote unquote expert Terran analysis. And I guess the bit of banter that comes out between guys like me and Jeff and Sean.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part when you have events stacked up against each other and you want to be able to prepare, because I simply did not have any time to look up the recent games of Solar, to look up even Sue's games. Like, didn't have time to watch. I caught like the first half of his series against Zest in my hotel in DC before I passed out. Like, I couldn't even physically stand to watch the games because I had to work the next day. So that's like the hard part of preparing to cast a tournament.
How does it bleed through into your real life, though? I mean, what other commitments do you have that you think maybe you neglect because you focus on esports? I mean, like, for example, I'll go first. This feels like we're getting into Alcoholics Anonymous territory. So I'll do mine first. Like, I know, like, this is like a massive strain on, like, for example, any relationship I'm gonna, be in. I've been with my girlfriend now for over 3 years, coming up to 4. And we're, I'm away a lot of weekends. Then, my hours, because I work for an American company, she is just getting in from work when they're hitting the middle of their day and I need to be available. Yeah. So we get this tiny little window of a few hours through the week where we see each other, even though we live with each other. And then after that, fuck it. Like, if I go away on a weekend, don't get to see it. And then plus I got to somehow try and fit friends into all of this. And typically, we're all older dudes, so no one likes to go out drinking on a work night, right? Because hangovers kick your ass once you hit 30. So it's like it's very hard to maintain any form of human relationship like that isn't immediately accessible through Skype. So that's something I find difficult.
Yeah, for me it's weird because I kind of gave up my whole, I guess, like every relationship I had to come out and do this, because I'm so far removed from like where I was. Obviously, when I had to leave school, a lot of those relationships came to an abrupt end as a student. That makes up most of the relationships that I had. But friends back home, they can't just go from Pennsylvania to California on a whim, right? So it's been easier for me to focus on this, which is why I've done other things like, work on my diet and myself, and eventually, assuming that I actually have work in California next year, eventually I'll get a car. But even then, meeting people is always weird when you work in esports, because you try to talk to someone. It's like, well, I talk about video games for a living. So you kind of just end up, as you said, say like 99% of my human interaction outside of stores is it's on Skype. It's just talking to other people in esports. It's tricky in that regard. You don't have the normal life, right? I guess is probably how people would describe it.
What about ambitions? I know you've got brothers in higher education. So what about you? I mean, is there anything that you'd like to go and do that maybe right now, because the going's good in esports, you can't really focus on?
It's so the things that I enjoyed the most before the whole esports thing, it was it's stuff. There's a reason why I guess I'm like at least hopefully not terrible at my job, and I've kind of always liked talking, being personable with people. Before the esports thing, right before esports, like 5 years I had been doing in a row of like legal work through like university and stuff, like mock trial or whatever. So talking, that was like my goal, right? I wanted to work with like marketing or promotions or some sort of PR service. Because even though I was a huge nerd, like I didn't really enjoy programming or whatever. Like I took enough classes to be like, this shit is not fun for me. So I think most of my ambitions are based around this, and I still think that it's for what my career is, from what I'm doing right now in esports. I do think it all builds into it. Long term, as far as ambitions go, I'd probably still like to do that. I'd like to be someone that goes to a meeting and convinces you why you should work with our shit, or go to an event, representing a company and be like, that guy that just kind of has, apparently, because I'm apparently the funniest guy in esports after I've had a few drinks, goes and just flirts around a little bit, right? That's, but still actually having a serious job. I don't like the idea of not being terribly busy.
So with that in mind, this is something maybe, I know it could be the kiss of death to talk about, so I'll understand if you are aloof. But this whole dead game mentality, and I know we've seen some casters make moves into other games. I know some current StarCraft casters are looking at making moves into other games. They feel like they need to do that for their career. Now, I know that, well, I think, but I certainly think I know that you've got the versatility to do other games and the delivery and stuff like that. So, is that something you've given any thought to? I mean, we're one expansion away from StarCraft 2 being kind of complete. We have no idea what the future will hold. Have you thought about what your future might hold, regardless of the StarCraft's future?
I think like in esports outside of StarCraft, it's obviously something that everybody like. You don't not think about working with other games, but the way that I've always viewed it is, and it's the same thing. It's the same argument that I give to anybody that talks about games that aren't StarCraft. Before I'm a StarCraft player, before I'm a StarCraft commentator, I'm a gamer. I like to play video games, and most importantly, I like to play video games that are good.
Yeah.
That's that's my qualifier. It's not, oh, is this a better game than StarCraft? Is this a good game? I've played all the games that people talk about in the esports scene. I've tried them all because I like, on the more competitive side, of course, but you ask anybody, fucking love all the good single player shit too, right? I'm a huge Metal Gear fan. If I don't think that's like a big secret, but when I look at other games, it's mostly a case of if I'm having fun, then I'll do it. If not, then I won't. Like, I don't. The only qualifier I have is the same one that I have for StarCraft. Like I said earlier, it's like, am I good enough at the game to not feel guilty with myself if I'm making a living off of it, right? Like, I wouldn't want to, like, right now, I think I'm like Silver 5 in League. I haven't played a game in like 4 months since my girlfriend, since I was in a relationship where someone was constantly asking me to play with them. I haven't touched the game.
Yeah.
But like, would I be, if someone offered me a job to commentate that game to start, like starting in like a week with like decent pay, I wouldn't accept it without committing or at least promising or being required to be at a certain level, right? Like, yeah. I mean, fuck, dude, if I'm in the bottom percentile of players, like, do you really think I should be the guy on camera talking about it? I don't have that much of an ego yet, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about enjoying it. If I enjoy the game and someone offers me a chance to work with it, there's very few reasons for me to say no. Right now I have enough work in StarCraft and I enjoy the game enough that I'm happy. There's more stuff coming down the road, so I don't think about it as like I don't know. I'm not. At least I'll say like I'm not actively talking to anyone. So,
I mean, okay. So, Apollo's always said he'll go down with a Titanic. Like he said, like he doesn't, and I think that's crazy. But he says like I'm StarCraft to the bone, and he doesn't seem, he said this in multiple interviews with me that we've done down the years. That as far as he's concerned, StarCraft is like the be all and end all for him. He wouldn't touch another game, and I think that's on the one hand admirable, but I think for somebody with all that talent, and in this industry where you can be fluid, you can move to another game, you can move to another scene, another community. You don't have to. I imagine it's easier for us than mainstream sports commentators. John Madden's never going to rock up commentate in an NBA game. He really does have to go down with a Titanic, which actually, as it turns out, isn't a bad thing. But, we don't have to worry about that. Esports seems to be the right size that you can kind of laterally move and, you'll get a little bit of shit about, lost passion or money grab or whatever, but you'll be okay in the long term. People will respect it. So I there's all these kind of options, I think, for people to cast. Even games that don't make it, that don't have a big scene. Like there's freelance gigs out there. You'll get like, I don't know, Killzone or want to run a one-off tournament just to dip their toe in the esports water, see how it goes. And they need a dude to cast it. Well, who's going to do it? Everyone is established and attached to a game. So you do need these guys who actually provide a service. We even saw, Tastosis do World of Tanks. I mean, people have, it's kind of worked on this contractual basis with these other games. So is that anything that you've given, any thought to? Like, would you cast just a one-off game, that would maybe not even be an esports just because?
Yeah, for me, it was something like that. Comparing it, like, at least to doing, like, if I'm going to be a full-time commentator for a game or, like, doing one-off. Like, if it turns out Metal Gear Solid 5 has, like, some sick multiplayer mode or some shit, like, even if it ends up, like, sucking, and if Konami's like, yo, we need someone that can just hype the shit out of this in English, as a huge fan, like, if someone that loves those kinds of games, like, I wouldn't say no, but I don't think I would actively search to do, like, commentate for something unless I guess the ultimate compromiser of humanity comes in. It's like, well, Nate, you haven't actually had real work in quite a while, and it comes down to money. But I don't think I would take a job like that out of greed. For me, it's just if it's fun. I'm still young enough that the way that I see it, StarCraft should last long enough that by the time either the game's competitive scene would end out, which I don't think it will. Like I pretty much hope that I can just stick with StarCraft, and then eventually, I guess it feels weird to say it, but I'm the kind of guy that I like the idea of eventually having a real job, like not just talking in front of a screen all day. I'd like to do other things at some point in my life.
Have you ever given any thought to, coaching, management, any of this sort of thing?
For teams and stuff like that?
Teams, players, whatever.
I offer advice to players and such. I never thought about doing professionally. No, I never thought StarCraft was really that big, right? Because if you really want to commit to something like that, StarCraft doesn't have the money in it, right? For me to be evil genius's coach, where I study all the replays and games that the opposing team plays, and then of course, I can't be a commentator and do that because it compromises the integrity of my job. When a team, when I cast an online tournament, if a player says, "Oh, Nathanias is casting," well, I have to play against a root player in 2 weeks. The last thing I want is for a player to ever feel like they don't want to play or they don't want to be casted because they don't trust that I'm not going to take their games and then give them out to their opponents directly and things like that. So it sounds cool, but not for StarCraft, not what I would do. The game would have to you'd have to be actual big sport level, right? There would have to be a lot of money floating around for that sort of thing, and I think I would probably enjoy commentating more than coaching at this point.
So just to wrap things up, we're coming towards the end of our time. Let's talk about the future then. The future for Nathanias, the entity. Where do you think you're going to be next? What do you think you're going to be doing? How long do you think you're going to be doing it for? Are there any things on the horizon that maybe you haven't been approached to do that you would like to do? What have you got looking in the crystal ball?
Well, now that I live in Los Angeles, of course, like any other young man, I think it'd be cool if I could get into all the crazy, ragey stuff like acting, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But realistically speaking...
Really? Hang on, no. Yeah, you don't get away with that. You'd like to be an actor?
I would absolutely love...
Because I loved you in Clerks.
To be... I actually still have to watch that movie. But, the thing... I've always wanted to be a voice actor, right? I'm sure anyone who's watched my commentary for, tournaments that are a little bit more laid back, I guess. I do my impressions and stuff, but I have my high-level aspirations. Obviously, I don't think I'll ever be an actual actor, but I would love to be a voiceover guy for games, right? That's when I do esports. For me, I don't just think of it's okay, yeah, whatever. I'm not gonna get rich. I'm not gonna bank enough money to live off of commentating video games. I don't see that. I don't see casting games as a long-term safe career choice, right? If my opportunities in working through companies got it to the point where I'm the commercial voice guy for Nvidia, Intel, some company, or I do voiceovers for Creeps or some shit in Warcraft 4. That to me is a much more awesome sounding, fulfilling thing to be doing than pretty much anything else, because I like games. I want to work with games, but I already told you, I'm way too lazy to be an actual developer or programmer. And I like to talk. So if I can keep those things going together, that's what I'd like to do most. It's stuff like that. And then of course, like I said, promoting stuff, just talking to people, really. It feels weird to say for me because I don't find talking very difficult, so maybe it's a cop out, but the number of people that tell me they're scared to death of public speaking or having to go and basically become friends with people they don't know in a matter of minutes, to me that's a kind of a fun thing. So that's if that remains a difficult thing for the average person to do, I would like to be the person that can do that and be that friendly guy that goes and manages shit and handles problems.
Maybe you could become an agent. How about that? Some Jerry Maguire kind of shit. You go out there, you represent, players.
Maybe
you could start your own agency. The Fabrikant talent agency.
I certainly wouldn't have to worry about applying for copyrights with how few Fabrikants there are out there, right?
Exactly. You can register that shit tomorrow. And you know, unless of course it does turn out that they were Russian spies all along, and you run into some real, you know, heavy government problems. But I think you'll be all right. And then you could be the guy that, like, you know, you go out to sponsors and you're like, look, give my client this money and I'll do the Batman voice, and everyone wins. You've got your dream, they get paid. You know, seriously, I think you should think about it.
Yeah, it's man, you know, if there's one thing that esports has kind of turned me off to, it's it is like the trying to pull things together, and maybe it works differently in other industries, but Jesus, I'm sure you know it can be really fucking difficult just to get a hold of someone for something super basic.
Yeah.
I you know what? Aside from that, I think I'd prefer just the having some guy get me the voice acting gigs. I'll be that guy that does generic dude who gets brutally murdered sound in every single game. I'll have that shit, even if it's just like the B-roll thing. I will take it. I'll take it with open arms.
So if you don't end up as being a scream recording somewhere for horror movies, or working on Pixar films as the lovable car with a broken exhaust or something, what are you going to do in esports? I mean, where are we going to see you next? What projects have you got lined up?
Well, I mean, as far as I know, WCS America next year I should be doing. This year is kind of running its course. I have a few more tournaments. I'm gonna be at Home Story Cup, not working there, maybe working there, who knows. But I actually don't have anything yet for 2015. I don't have anything confirmed, right? Like there's probably WCS America. If Red Bull is going to stick with StarCraft, they haven't announced anything, and I actually don't even know myself. Then hopefully I didn't fuck up too bad. I can keep working with those guys because they're awesome. But yeah, it's any time I don't have, I want to keep streaming. Like if I think about a realistic end game for myself outside of getting a miracle job offer from one of the companies that I work with that allows me to not worry about invoicing people and dealing with messages for interviews from journalists. I think I'd like to be at least on the esports side of things. If I'm not commentating, a full streamer. I want to stream a lot. I really enjoy the interactions I've had meeting people through Twitch and streaming. It's probably, like I said, for me, meeting people is the most enjoyable part of my job. I'm not, at least unless I'm doing it wrong, I'm not surprised that I'm not getting super dirty rich off of this work. And I said, I only do it because it's fun, because there's definitely a lot of things that aren't as awesome, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I hope you do get super rich, Nathan. You're a nice guy. Just for the record, you don't have an ego. I wanna end on that. That was a joke.
A little bit of ego helps every now and again, though. I will say that.
Oh, you got to, man. You got to know your worth, I think. But there's a difference between knowing your worth and believing your own bullshit. And I think that's the classic esports trap, that you can know what you're worth, but then suddenly you end up believing your own bullshit, and you just end up in this bubble, and eventually no one wants to fucking work with you, no one can tolerate you, no one can stand being around you, and then your opportunities dry up, and until you swallow a big slice of humble pie, you're not going to get back to the big leagues, I think that's kind of... I walk that tightrope every day, believe me. But yeah, know your value, but don't believe your bullshit. And you don't, frankly. You are an awesome guy. You're a great ambassador for the game and the scene. And I would even go so far as to say, the poster boy for how hard work can pay off. If you agree with that.
At the risk of instantly developing ego, I just I won't say anything to that. But I hope there are people out there that recognize that I completely came in on my own without even really expecting this to happen, and that if you are as crazy of a son of a bitch as me, then perhaps you too can do it. If I've inspired anyone, I guess I'm satisfied with that answer. But hopefully there's no one gets unrealistic expectations, right?
Yeah. So final shout outs. I don't know if you've got any sponsors or colleagues or anything you're contractually obliged to say. But if you do, now is the time to say it.
Well, somehow it just turns out I'm actually not getting paid thousands of dollars yet to plug sponsors. But I will say thanks to all the people. Of course, I said earlier, Jeff, Maximus Black, cool guy. Someone else who often gets mistaken for having a really big ego. He's just on top of his shit. And all the awesome people that have helped me get work. And my stream people, Apollo probably is a good person to mention. Too Good. And then my big stream boys, Panic Switched. And yeah, I think that's just about it.
All right. Well, look, thanks for making the time to talk to me while you reset your sleep pattern. Good luck with that, and good luck for the future. I do look forward to seeing you on the road again, brother. So take care.
Cheers,
and
mate.
To all the people who've been listening, we are going to have another podcast for you very soon. I like to say at the start of the show, there was a hiatus. I am now going to try and do 2 of these a week. I feel like I'm going to have my own Broken Promises article, perhaps, but I'm going to try and go for it. And we've got some great guests lined up for the near future. Aiming to release these every Wednesday, Thursday-ish, and then maybe one on a weekend or on a Monday. But you know where the channel is. You know how to find it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter to keep on top of things. Make sure you follow my Facebook. And thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The Richard Lewis Esports Podcast. Taking you behind the scenes of the esports industry.